I got my son a 7K motorcycle for his 18th birthday this past June. My son is obsessed with automobile and loves motorcycles. In his room he has plenty of models and posters of motorcycles of all types. His bio dad passed away when he was just 12, now I'm married to my current husband and he has kids of his own. My husband has always been against my son's interest in motorcycles. He thinks I'm encouraging him to be reckless, distracting him from school and by extension his future, and spoiling him and blowing away money by spending 7K on a motorcycle. This caused some tension between him and my son, so I told him to stop complaining about it. Around 2 weeks ago, my son's motorcycle went missing. We opened a police report but nothing came out of it. It just disappeared. My husband had a smirk on his face the entire time, just walking around saying, "I told you so. You just wasted your money." This was unbearable to hear, to be quite honest. My mother-in-law visited few days ago. She was talking about the other house my husband owns and mentioned seeing a motorcycle. One that's similar to the one that we lost in my husband's carriage while she was cleaning it. She goes to clean that house weekly even though it's empty. My husband plans on giving it to his kids as inheritance. I was puzzled. I asked if she was certain, but she showed me a photo she took of it which confirmed that it was indeed my son's motorcycle. I immediately rushed to call my husband and confront him about it. He admitted that he took and hid the motorcycle in his garage as a last resort after me and his stepson kept brushing him and his thoughts off about the 7K being spent on something unnecessary and that could cause issues. I blew up at him demanding he return it. He refused and told me he had been considering selling it and giving the money back to me so I could use it wisely this time. I told him I was serious and that I'd call the police. He literally said, "This is a family matter and cops can't do shit about it." I had enough. I called the cops soon as I ended the call with him. The motorcycle was found and returned. But my husband had to be taken in since there was an open file about the motorcycles going missing. He was let go eventually, but he was livid with me. He came home yelling about how awful what I did was and how crazy my behavior was. I refused to engage in the argument, but he told his entire family about it and they judged me for calling the police on my own husband, even though I already asked him to return it. He said he was just looking out for my son and that one day we'll realize that he was right, but only when it's too late. My son isn't speaking to me or my husband. I feel horrible about the whole situation and am starting to think I handled this the wrong way. I bought a house a few months ago and moved in last month. The previous owner was a friendly old man that could no longer live alone, so he decided to sell and move in with his daughter. Just to be clear now, apparently he had been allowing use of his driveway to his disabled neighbor lady, largely because street parking is extremely limited and what little street parking there is pretty much instantly occupied. What I am saying is unless you have a driveway you end up having to park a good 5-minute walk away, and that's the best case scenario. I put disabled in quotation marks because the lady in question is just really overweight and I am not sure if that counts as disabled. Obviously I was unaware of this, so I was surprised to see a large SUV parked in my driveway when I moved in. I ended up having to knock on several doors asking whose car it was because the movers could not stand still on the busy road too long. I figured out it was the neighbor's car, so after a good 10 minutes of knocking, an extremely angry enormous lady opened the door. I told her to move the car and she immediately started arguing that the neighbor said it was fine. I told her he moved out. I moved in and no, it is not fine, and to move it because the movers need to unload my stuff. She begrudgingly did. I ended up seeing her walking back half an hour later completely wet with sweat. Now a few days later I went back to work and lo and behold, the SUV is parked in my driveway again. I go over there again, spend 20 minutes knocking on the door before this lady opens the door, again, visibly angry. I tell her to move her car. My driveway is not public parking. She protests, saying her ankles can't take walking the distance and claims I can easily walk. I tell her that while that might be true, it's my goddamn driveway and I want to park there myself. Again she moves her car. Again I spot her half an hour later drenched in sweat making her way home. Well, it happened again a week ago and this time she would not open her door. I got tired of it and had her SUV towed. She of course came to my house to scream at me. I told her to get the hell off my property. A few days later I had a small fence installed with a lock on it to make sure it did not happen again. I have since been getting dirty looks from her and one other neighbor, and when I told my mom, she told me I should be nicer to people. I do feel sort of bad too. She clearly struggles with the walk after all. My partner and I want to be married, but we don't care much for the idea of having a wedding. We wanted to elope, but my mom has been telling me since I was 16, and had never even had a boyfriend, that she wanted to see me get married and she would basically never forgive me if I eloped. I do like the idea of my family being there to celebrate with us, but I hate the idea of spending money we don't have on this huge party just so that our relationship can change in nothing but name and legal benefits. And for various reasons, it doesn't make sense for us to wait until we can afford a wedding to get married. We wanted to keep it small, preferably under $3,000, which is honestly more than I'd like to spend. But we have to be realistic. We had planned on having it in my in-laws' backyard, but even that was more money and effort than I was willing to put forth. I was stressed and feeling like I was out of options, so one day, I vented to my mom. She seemed really excited about the idea of helping me plan a wedding. It was kind of a red flag when she said, "My mom didn't help me plan my wedding. Let me live vicariously through you." But still, I agreed. She seemed really excited to help me find a venue. I was not excited, because I have not been excited about one single step in the wedding process, and I just want it to be over. About a week later, I found out that this really great park in our city, that my partner loves, does weddings for an extremely small fee. I emailed the event coordinator and found out that the date we want is available. I told my mom, and her reaction was, "So I guess you don't need my help finding a place, then?" And every time I talk about it, she says the same thing. She has always talked about how shitty it is to guilt trip someone, but I feel like that's exactly what she's trying to do. I honestly can't tell whether or not I've done something wrong. Like, I'm not sure if I implied that I would only get married in a place she helped me find. I don't feel like trying to take action on my own wedding is that great of an offense, but I can tell she's upset. I want to make her feel better, but at the same time, I don't want to change our plans again just so that she can feel involved. My wife and I bought a 4-bedroom house in PA that my son lives in. Our son went to college in PA and wanted to stay in the area. So we bought the house as a second home. We live in NJ and commute into Manhattan for work. We figured that he would have a place to live and we could visit every so often and spend some quality time together. We pay the taxes and services / maintenance on the house. Our son pays for his groceries and the house utilities. All was going well for a few years. Our son meets a girl and they get serious. We met her and she seems nice enough. They announce their engagement and she moves into the house with our son. Now for the problem, the wedding. We hold a little get-to-know-you barbecue at the PA house. My son and daughter are there, as are our son's fiancée and her parents. And sisters. We all seem to be getting along well. My wife, daughter and the fiancé go into the house along with her mother and sisters and my son. A few minutes later my wife and daughter come out and are really upset. They come over and tell me we're leaving and driving back to NJ. I try to find out what happened. Once we get back to NJ and they calm down, they tell me that our son and his fiancée along with her family don't want us at the wedding. According to what I was told, we're not their kind of people. I was livid. I called my son and asked him WTH this was about. He tells me that her family feel that we are not good enough and will embarrass them at a family wedding, and that we are all uninvited from the wedding. I let a week go by to calm myself down and drive back to the PA house. The new future in-laws are in the house along with the fiancé. It appears that they all moved into the house. They ask me why I'm there. I tell them that since we aren't invited to the wedding, I was coming over to talk to my son. They tell me to leave their house. I lost it and told them that they had 30 days to get out. Tell my son I'm selling the house and he could find somewhere else to live with all of you. I go to a realtor in town and list the house for sale. They call my son at work and tell him what I said. Apparently they thought that he owned the house. He calls me and asks why I'm selling his house. I tell him I paid for it along with the taxes on it and it is mine. He was living there rent-free, but since he doesn't want us in his new life, he has to get out. I tell him the same as I told his future in-laws. They have 30 days to get out, then I'll get a lawyer and get them evicted. Am I the for taking a hard stance on this? He is my son, but the in-laws seem to take over and we no longer count.